Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tucker and Crowley Report. We've been on hiatus, but we are now back, and I am joined by Franklin Tucker, and I am Mike Crowley. So, Franklin, let's talk about what's in the news. I understand that the MBTA Communities Advisory Committee has wrapped up. What can you tell us?
Well, the MBTA Communities Committee, Advisory Committee, which is run by Rachel Heller and Roy Epstein. They submitted their recommendations to this select board, which accepted them. And what it is that it's been out there in the public for a while, but these are the formal the formal data and the formal maps.
Okay.
Where the zoning changes are going to be going.
Okay.
And these zoning changes will make it easier for multifamily homes and more development to come in. And in Belmont, there'll be some recommendations for affordable housing to be built.
So what part of the community would be affected by the zoning changes?
Well, there's three real major points, and that's one's Waverly Square, and that's because it is where the commuter rail is, and that's what they're looking to put commuter rail and housing together. The other one will be Belmont Center, and the third one will be at the Cambridge line near where Bethel is.
The Bethel Temple.
That area. The recommendations is that it would theoretically allow about 1,600 new units of housing. Now, this is just theoretical. This is not like if you'd have to have a developer come in and want to build it. And want to build that.
And that's not assured.
No, but it would be easier to build it there, because it would be as of right. And it's looking to do multifamilies and things like that. They don't want this to be single unit, condominiums for rich people who go to Harvard.
Let me ask you about implications for commercial development, because I understand that one of the concerns was that we should be marrying foot traffic from higher density housing areas with additional commercial.
Well, if somebody wants to build commercial in the same area, they will have to go through the existing zoning for commercial. This is not going to change commercial zoning in any way. This will only affect residential building. So what's now going to happen is these recommendations go to the planning board, which is going to develop the new zoning.
Okay.
It will then there'll be a lot of public meetings and a lot of public education. And I think that's the most important thing. That's what Rachel Heller was talking about, and she said, this is not over for the town. The town has to really push this and make this something that people can be understand what this really is about. So there are a lot of people who still think that this will force the town in a 28 acre three places, 28 acres, will put in 1,600 units. No, that's just not the case. It's the ability to build up to, not it's forcing us to build that.
And so, what happens after the planning board?
Planning board will set up the new will create the new zoning package. It will go to town meeting as any kind of zoning changes. It will come before in November at a special town meeting, and then it will be either passed or denied by the town meeting.
Now, if it passed town meeting, is that the end of the story?
No, there's actually, as probably or if you've heard, there was one town, Milton, and that had a referendum on the zoning changes, and even though their town meeting overwhelmingly supported it, the population did not. And so then that gets denied. But, to get a referendum, you have to get a lot of signatures, and you have to do it at a certain period of time. But it's still a possibility that it could come down to the voters.
All right. So there will be a series of meetings taking place with the planning board that will be public, and then we assume that this goes to town meeting in the fall.
That's right, in mid-November.
Okay, Franklin, let's talk about. I think up next is our student enrollment forecast for the Belmont Public Schools. It's been updated, I understand.
That's right. As of the last time the town had, the school committee had an enrollment demographics. It was back in 2018, and the same person who did that one, Jerome McKibben, came back, and because something happened in 2020 that really shut down the schools and changed a lot of the demographics. So he's come back and he's made a second enrollment forecast, and this one is much different than the one that he projected back in 2018. Now the one in 2018 proved to be very spot on. His calculations showed that that the schools were going to have about 5,100 students, total between pre-kindergarten to grade 12. So in many ways, that was one of the reasons why the school was the new high school was built at such a how big it was built.
Mm-hmm.
Now what we're seeing is that the population of the Belmont schools, which was at 4,700 back in 2021, at the top of the pandemic, currently it's at 4,378. So we're looking at about 300 students less. Now he's predicting that the rate of change is going to be a downward slope, very slight. It's 1%. For the next 10 years, but he's projecting a student population in 34 at 4,171.
Now let me ask you this, Franklin. The earlier McKibben demographic study, it did anticipate that enrollment would taper off at some point. So is this updated projection, are we merely catching up because a number of years have passed to that?
Actually not.
No, okay.
I mean, he showed even an increase until about the mid-level of this decade, 27, 28. We're seeing a downward trend right now. And a lot of that has to do with, the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with people's decision whether to go to public school or go to a private school or some other school, homeschool even.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, he's seeing just an inability for us to gain students. And the real thing that's happening here, and he says, when you want to look at the change, you don't want to look at like a population. And if the population gets older, you would expect homes to start, freeing up, and people in their 70s wanting to sell their homes to younger, to people who will bring kids in. That's not the case right now. Right now, you're seeing a lot of people to stay in their homes. But also, he says the most important trend you have to look at in Belmont is not population, older population, the changing and aging, but really take a look at the 30-year fixed mortgage rate.
Now that's surprising to me, Franklin, because my perception has been that the local real estate market has been driven largely by all cash deals, but you're saying that's not the case?
That's not the case. That's not what he's showing.
Okay.
He's basically saying, look, for the last, I forgot what it was, 15, 20 years, we've seen really low mortgage rates, in the 3%. Now, after we saw this spike in inflation due to the pandemic and everything that had to deal with that, we're seeing rates right now at 7 and 6%. For people who are thinking about buying a home, this is a doubling of rates. They're already shy on putting a lot of money down on something, and it's just preventing this turnover that we should see. So, until that changes, we're going to have a trend. And he says that we're now with this rate. This is this 6-7%. That's staying for a long time, for 10 years.
Oh, he's projecting that staying for 10 years. I mean, I know the Fed has been mulling.
We can talk about the Fed. I already have my opinion about the Fed.
No, but the Fed has been mulling dropping rates. They're holding off because inflation is still too high. But his expectation is the mortgage rates continue to be high no matter what happens with inflation.
That's right. It's just this is where it's going to be. The rates tend to settle in a certain range, and they just will not budge. It takes a lot to change that. So he's basically saying that until those, like I said, until those mortgage rates change, we're going to have not that great of a turnover in homes.
Okay.
And the other reason he said is that we as a society have not built like the next level of residential housing or rentals for older people, people who don't want 2 stories, but who are not ready for assisted living. We have seen some of that being built in Lexington on the Belmont line next to the golf club, but we're not even close to what we really need. And if until that happens, and in 10 years we can't build enough. So that's not going to change in this area.
All right. Well, we'll have to see if the McKibben demographic study proves correct or not. But it could have if it does prove correct, it could have implications for use of our school buildings.
That's right. When you think about it, you look at a building like the Butler, or you look at a building like the Burbank, which will need extensive care in the next 10 years simply to be viable. If you close one of them, are you really going to need if you close one of them, is it going to cause trouble throughout the district, or is it going to be just something that you can do? And if you do it, why not do it when you're doing redistricting, which is coming next year?
All right, Franklin. All right, so next story. Math has been an issue for some students and some parents in the Belmont Public Schools for a number of years, since at least 2019, perhaps 2020. And now we have some new changes that are coming or potentially coming. And what can you tell us, Franklin?
Yeah, I believe it was in 2020 or 2019 that a 7th grade algebra was part of the curriculum, but then it was taken out because I think a lot of teachers were a little leery of it. It's not nothing that the teachers really are looking to do, in terms of overall the math course from 1 to 12. But the school committee voted 5 with one abstention to approve I think it was they're asking Superintendent Jill Geiser to approve funding in the budget for a 7th grade algebra.
Now, do we know if this has been done?
Now, this is the interesting part. She's going to do that, and the budget is coming out next week.
Right.
Now it comes
in fact,
down.
They're going to have a fiscal 25 budget hearing on Tuesday that the public can attend.
And what's going to happen is that you can approve a budget, you can approve a line item. That doesn't mean it's going to be done. Because now it comes down to, can you put a 7th grade algebra into the system? This is not going to be for 200 kids. It's going to be for 20, 20 to 25. And if you have to take FTEs, full-time equivalent teachers, out of one classroom to do the 7th grade algebra, are you disadvantaging those kids who are losing that? And it's a bit of a you have that problem. Can you fit it in? Does it really work? There's a lot of moving pieces. And as Geiser said, even though it is going to go through into the budget, they're going to put a budget line item in there. She said it's not a slam dunk that it's going to be done. And one of the reasons is that Superintendent Geiser and the head of the math department and the teachers all are not in favor of it. they feel it's a specialty course. You're taking away too much from other less academically challenging math courses, which the majority of the kids are taking.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you defend that? But second of all, all has to do with like this is a policy issue, right? So in how it usually works is if you're going to add a class, usually it's an educator who comes before the superintendent and the school committee and says we'd like to add this course,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, and then it goes through a process. Is it budget neutral? Can we do it with without changing too many teachers? And that's usually how it works. This was different. This is where parents, very aggressive, for their kids, to have the 7th grade algebra, and what they were doing is they were pressuring the school committee members, then who would pressure the superintendent. So you're not doing the process the way it should be and the way they want to do it. And I heard of a school committee member saying, we want to have parents more involved, but then you have other school committee members going, what does that mean? Are they going to now dictate, what kind of courses we're going to be doing because their child needs that course or wants that course or advantages of them? So now this is a real policy issue, So this is going to be an interesting subject over the next, year at the school committee. Do you allow more involvement by parents,
Mm-hmm.
even though educators find it, not it hurts other kids. You don't want to just pick and this is what we have in math right now. There are kids who the kids even label them as smart math and dumb math, and they want to be in smart math, but you're already it's already this little bit of we'll try to make sure that the dumb math kids get enough support. Now, is that the policy of the school committee? Is that the policy of the district? It's fraught with a lot of something has to be thought out before this is moving forward.
All right. Well, we'll have to see what happens. It's an interesting issue, and I'm sure that parents will be paying a lot of attention.
They'll be there Tuesday.
Okay. All right. So Franklin, let's talk about sports real quick.
Yeah, something we can all be proud of. Well, in sports, the boys, we have a boys volleyball team for the first time ever, and they won their very first game that they play, and a lot of those kids are just learning the sport at a higher level, so it's just a learning curve so we'll see a lot more of that. We're seeing ultimate frisbee, on a club level, and that sport is just, I don't know. It's more of a leisurely kind of sport.
Well, it's a fun sport.
Yeah, it's a fun sport.
As are many sports.
We have indoor and outdoor track
Mm-hmm.
is up and running. Good. Then we have lacrosse. And the teams are in very competitive leagues, and I think they're at 500 right now. Both, I think the girls are now 4-2, and the boys are 4-3, and they're going to the meat of their schedule. So it's going to be they're both very good teams, but they're in good competition. And then we have baseball and softball. Last year, softball won 2 games. They won their first 3 this year. I think they're at 500 too. I think they're at 4-3 or 4-4. So softball is and baseball is, I believe, they were undefeated until just this week.
Mm-hmm.
So they have 2 really good young pitchers. So that is an exciting team. And both softball and baseball have new fields, which are right outside the middle school, and it's a pleasure to see them. They're still being built out, and a lot of balls are still being hit into houses and cars and nearly hitting people because we don't have fences that are high enough, and foul balls go off into the neighborhood. So it's a little fun to see what's happening there. A lot of balls go into Clay Pit Pond, and we just let them sit there because they're contaminated.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Franklin. You can see more of Franklin's reporting at belmontonian.com. That's all for this time, and we will see you hopefully next week.